When people think of the first men that landed on the moon in July of 1969, they think of Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. They think of, that's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. And sometimes they think about the conspiracy theories, but most no one thinks about what could have gone wrong. Imagine for just a second if Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin had died and had been unable to return to Earth on the moon. In an article titled, "What If Apollo 11 Failed?" written by Nola Taylor Redd, published July 2nd, 2014, historian John Logston said, "All involved knew that the risks of an accident on any flight to the moon, especially the first attempt, were high. That means Neil Armstrong, Edwin Aldrin, Michael Collins, and all of NASA knew that this mission could go wrong." It seems also that Richard Nixon's speechwriter William Safire was aware of this too, drafting a speech on July 18th of that year titled "An Event of Moon Disaster." This eloquent and beautifully crafted speech calls on the human race to remember the bravery and sacrifice given by Aldrin and Armstrong. Even Safire, I'm sure, didn't know how dangerous this flight was. But before I analyze the speech, I'll give you all some background on what could have and did happen during the epic flight of the Apollo 11. The rocket successfully took off on July 16th. 4 days later, on July 20th, the lunar module, codenamed the Eagle, was set to land on the surface of the moon. Rod Pyle wrote an article in July 2014 titled "Apollo 11's Scariest Moments, Perils of the First Manned Moon Landing," quoting Gene Kranz, a retired NASA flight director, saying, "We would either land on the moon, we would crash attempting to land, or we would abort. The final two outcomes were not good." Somehow, though, despite communication cutting in and out and the computer overloading, the Eagle landed safely on the Sea of Tranquility. After spending about a day on the moon, Armstrong and Aldrin were faced with their biggest struggle, getting off the moon safely. Not being able to get off the surface of the moon would mean being left to starve to death or commit suicide. Michael Collins, the man who was waiting in Columbia, the command module orbiting the moon, could not help, could only watch Aldrin and Armstrong from afar. In How Michael Collins Became the Forgotten Astronaut of Apollo 11, an article published July 18, 2009, and written by Robin McKee, Michael Collins admitted, "My secret terror for the last 6 months has been leaving them on the moon and returning to Earth alone. Now I am within minutes of finding out the truth of the matter. If they fail to rise from the surface or crash back into it, I'm not going to commit suicide. I'm coming home forthwith, but I will be a marked man for life, and I know it." Even though a circuit breaker for starting the engine had broken off of the Eagle's command console and Aldrin had to improvise by using a pin, they made it safely off the face of the moon. Thankfully, on July 24th, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins made a safe return. The speech that was written in the event of moon disaster was not needed and stayed locked away until July 7th of 1999, when it was made public by Jim Mann, a writer for the Los Angeles Times, who wrote an article titled "Story of a Tragedy That Was Not to Be," explaining that he had come across this remarkable documentary evidence of this lugubrious planning a couple of years ago while doing research in the National Archives. The speech reads as follows. "Fate has ordained that the men who went to the moon to explore in peace will stay on the moon to rest in peace. These brave men, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, know that there is no hope for their recovery, but they also know that there is hope for mankind in their sacrifice. These two men are laying down their lives in mankind's most noble goal, the search for truth and understanding. They will be mourned by their family and friends. They will be mourned by their nation. They will be mourned by the people of the world, and they will be mourned by a Mother Earth that dared send 2 of her sons into the unknown. In their exploration, they stirred the people of the world to feel as one. In their sacrifice, they bind more tightly the brotherhood of man. In ancient days, men looked at stars and saw their heroes in the constellations. In modern times, we'll do much the same, but our heroes are epic men of flesh and blood. Others will follow and surely find their way home. Man's search will not be denied, but these men were the first. and they remain the foremost in our hearts. For every human being that looks up at the moon in the nights to come will know that there is some corner of another world that is forever mankind. This speech is so emotionally charged. The words such as noble goal and sacrifice, as well as the brotherhood of man and epic men of flesh and blood, stir something almost regal and honorable. It stirs up pride for the fact that epic men walked upon the face of the moon. But the speech would also have soothed the pain felt by not just the American people, but also the world. When man first walked on the moon, the world was connected in accomplishment. The gravity of these first men dying on the moon would also have connected everyone. Through this speech, the entire world would have been connected in a pathos of mourning. Hearing this speech is chilling. The knowledge that the first men on the moon could have died on the moon is shocking. But how long would NASA have waited after a moon disaster? The speech doesn't give us these answers, simply saying that others will follow. Similar events have happened, though. After the Challenger disaster in 1986, it took NASA almost 3 years to send more people into space, and 2 years to send people back into space following the Columbia disaster in 2003. But that doesn't matter. The event didn't happen. This speech is evidence of something else, something great. Man, the discoverer of this speech, I believe, said it best. These secret preparations are, in their way, also a testament to hope. We may prepare for tragedy, but our worst nightmares rarely happen. Armstrong and Aldrin walked on the rubble of the moon, and then came home again. Nixon's undelivered speech was thrown into a file and happily forgotten.